am Dr. Jay Hitson, founder of GoodDoctors.Health, and I'm so excited for today and what we are going to be talking about. As we come into the new year and we were putting together our programs and the plans for what we were going to be getting into, I had no intentions of getting into hormones so early in this year, but I'm going to tell you the amount of questions and people calling in and just the overwhelming abundance of especially women who are dealing with this huge range of hormone related issues. I just had to bump this up in our topics. So that's what we're going to be hitting on here this week and for the next few weeks. For those of you who are currently working with me, your members, this is for you. This is for the women in your life who are really struggling. So I hope right now, if there is someone who has been dealing with infertility or cycle issues, perimenopause, postmenopause, all the different hormone related issues, I really do hope that you share this with them. One of the biggest things that I want to make sure that at least the people who work with me understand is that if you address the root cause, it is so much simpler addressing all the other symptoms. And a lot of times with regards to hormones are like the innocent bystander in a whole other health issue that needs to get addressed. And frankly, when we keep throwing hormones and hormone therapies at all of these women, yeah, you may feel a little different, but you never address the root cause, and all of those different things are going to continue to just go unchecked, unnoticed. So one of the things that we're going to be getting into today is the real root cause, what's really going on under the surface behind all of these different issues, and understanding that things like issues with menstrual cycles and infertility or postpartum, and then just I would call it just the really exhausted mom, all the way up to perimenopause and menopause. Though they're really just chapters of the same story. They're not individually isolated problems. So, for those of you who are watching, I really do encourage you. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, because that way you can ask questions as we go along. And for those of you who are watching this afterwards, because I know that's how a lot of this works, I just encourage you put questions in the comments, especially those of you who are working with me on a really consistent basis. If you hit those questions in there, I probably get them to them during office hours, and we'll go into more detail then. So let me do one more thing before I get into this topic. I know I'm going to be talking a lot about today, and in general for this little series, I'm going to be talking about women and hormones. But men, I don't want you to feel like immediately excluded from this conversation. A lot of the men that I've been working with, they have important women in their lives, and they really do want to help. They really do want to understand what's going on. They want to they would love to be the hero in the lives of the important women um, that they care about, but they just don't understand. And so many of the different conversations that are going around, a lot of men just like I'm out. I just don't want to be a part of it. And let me just tell you, if you catch on to what I'm talking about here today, not only will we address what's really happening, what's at the root cause, but we can get into some fantastic solutions for how to reverse this, that not only address the hormone issues, but just incredible improved overall health. So let's kind of dive on in. Today, as we are going through, I want to be very clear that my overall philosophy with regards to health is pretty straightforward. Again, it's always going to be root cause centric. I don't like masking and managing symptoms. In fact, that really is very um, it's appalling to my system. Whenever there is something we can address, when there's something that we can really make a huge difference, why are we letting it get worse and just trying to make people feel better? That is not my philosophy. Not everybody has to address things that way, but that just understand where I'm coming from. The other thing, really important to understand how, again, as I get into this detail, I come from a very practical application. There are a lot of individuals, and gurus out there who are going to get into hormones, and they're going to get into some really complex protocols and procedures and all of that. And I'm not against any of it. But where I'm going at is for people who really need obvious, easy. They're not ready to completely overhaul their entire life and their entire schedule just to try to balance their hormones. They want something that's easy, manageable, affordable, and that's what we're going to be getting into today. So first and foremost, a lot of this is based on just my real world experience. There's a lot of theory out there. There's a lot of here's this research and here's all that, and I love all of that. But if it doesn't work in the real world, who cares? So in the thousands and thousands of success stories, I'm kind of narrowing down the things that work the most commonly for women who are experiencing these various range of hormone related issues. Um, with and I'm going to tell you as well, we're probably not going to be able to get into the whole thing in this particular series. So again, if you just hit that notify bell, you subscribe, that way you'll be get all of the different sections of this particular series, because it's a lot to cover. So let's talk about the most common root cause when we're talking about all the hormone. And again, this is everything from early teenage years all the way up into postmenopause. What are the most common root causes behind why there's this imbalance? And it really comes down to depletion. That's the word, depletion. The body has prioritization of how it utilizes your resources. So your body runs on vitamins, minerals, nutrients. Your car runs on gasoline. The heater in my house runs on propane. All these things need fuel. Your body needs fuel in these forms. If it doesn't have that fuel, it doesn't operate well. You can have the most perfect car, but if you don't put fuel in it, it doesn't go. It doesn't appear to work. It's really quite a simple process. That's the way our bodies are designed. And here's the thing is, in the body's way of being such a brilliant self-preserving mechanism, it prioritizes essential functions over non essential functions. It prioritizes essential systems over non essential systems. So, for instance, your heart, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, they are very essential systems. So, when you are taking in resources, those things get first dibs. Those things are going to get fed first. And then what happens is, if there's enough left over, then the non essential organs and the non essential systems get fed. I have a lot of different videos on what I call the unhealthy trifecta, the unhealthy triad, and it is the thyroid, the gallbladder, and the reproductive organs. For so many years, women would be coming in, and they would be, especially like, let's say they're starting to get into that fifth, sixth decade of life, and they would be sitting there. They're like, "Oh yeah, I had my gallbladder all removed. That was done in my 20s or 30s, and then hysterectomy came not too long after. And then they're showing up to me here now, another decade later, and they're like, now they're talking to me about my thyroid, the unhealthy trifecta. They are non-essential systems. You can live without a thyroid. You can live without reproductive organs. You can live without a gallbladder. Do you want to? No, but that's how it works. And so it would, and this was such, I heard this just day in, day out. And it, like I said, it all kind of makes sense. Years and years of depletion, those are the organ systems that are getting affected. Today, definitely get into thyroid, I definitely get into digestion and gallbladders, but today we're talking about that reproductive system. So your reproductive system, it's at the end of the food chain. It really is. And we see this all the time, that the reproductive system, when it doesn't have what it needs, it stops functioning. You see this women who, for instance, either are, don't, the women who have too low of body fat, maybe because of illness, maybe because they're athletes, maybe because of an eating disorder. When women have too low a body fat, stop having a cycle. It just stops. There's not enough to keep it operating, so it just shuts down. There's not enough there to maintain a healthy pregnancy, so it just ceases. It requires vitamins, minerals, and nutrients to run in a healthy way. Well, so, but a lot of people are like, well, I eat healthy or I take some supplements. Shouldn't I have that all covered? Well, here's the reasons why, especially with young. Like I'm going to start with the people who start having problems right away. I mean, they have had issues with their menstrual cycles since almost day one. Here's a few of the root causes. In order to be fully fueled, most of that fuel is going to be coming from your digestive tract. Well, right there, we know where the problem is because so many people have issues with their digestive systems. And I'm seeing this getting worse and worse and worse as the decades go by. One, because of antibiotic usage. So, antibiotics, they are very harsh on the good bacteria that you need to break down your food. So, those who have been on a lot of rounds of antibiotics in their life, those who especially have been either on multiple rounds or maybe never got probiotics, to replenish afterwards, or sometimes there's just some really toxic rounds of antibiotics. Either way, the utilization, and I'm going to go as far as to say overutilization of antibiotics is what's happening with a lot of these young women because their digestive tracts are already in a state that they haven't been absorbing for years. So rebuilding the digestive tract just from that. The other thing that we're running into is the quality of our foods. So while people may be eating, how many nutrients are actually in what they're eating? It's just not. It's not what it was 100 years ago. Nowadays, it is incredibly common for so many children to be eating pretty much only processed foods, which are severely lacking in nutritional quality. Um, I did a nutritional talk at a school that is in a town that I would not consider like it's not a just a small town. I would consider it in middle grade, economics. It's not a depressed area, but not it's not the affluent area anyway. But whenever they brought me in to speak to the children about nutrition, um, they were talking about how the very basics of how these children have no concept of how to eat anything that doesn't come in a box or out of a window. Like, how many of these kids had no idea what it was? Like, if you held, when we held the egg up, they had no idea what was inside it. They've never seen an egg cooked. Think about that. If so, I mean, an egg is one of the easiest things there are to cook. And we were seeing, they didn't even know what that is. They only knew how to take things out of freezers and put them in microwaves or go to some window drive through. And that's how they knew how to eat. That's it. Well, think about what that's doing to our society. I mean, it wasn't that way whenever I was a kid. There just wasn't those opportunities. We had one McDonald's, one. Yeah, I mean, that was it. I mean, there was no way to only get your food from those sources. And I mean, anyway, we could get into a whole thing on that. But when we are talking about hormones, this is where it's starting. Okay, this is where the problems are starting. Um, the other thing that I'm running into is there are some really predominant genetic factors that we're learning about now. These genetic factors, I would say that we're still just really coming to a full understanding, especially now that genetic testing has become so much more available and more affordable. It used to be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Now we're talking about hundreds of dollars to get a really very full genetic profile. And it is a very interesting thing to do. I will say that, and to understand these different genetic factors that could be contributing. But we are seeing there's certain factors like MTHFR. I mean, we're looking at that it could be affecting about 50% of the population. All right, so to have at least one variant of that genetic factor. And people who have that variant, well, they don't absorb a tremendous amount of vitamins and nutrients, especially B vitamins, very well, because of all of the different effects. And that's just one. So we are seeing the genetic variants. That's another reason why we're seeing this happening so much more and so young. And then the other one I'm going to bring up, and this is just the most common, the other reason why we see a lot of young people having issues so early on, um, is the rise of anxiety. So to just to explain where I'm going there, when somebody is experiencing a lot of anxiety, let's say specifically fight or flight. When you are in fight or flight, you do not rest and digest. Okay? They're kind of two sides of a teeter totter. So if you're in fight or flight, you are not resting and you are not digesting. So we see a tremendous number of these young people who have anxiety, whose systems are in fight or flight, and they're dealing with all kinds of things like bloating and constipation and gas and they just nausea and it makes sense what's happening there. So if your stomach, okay, think about the digestive tract, and it's that tunnel. All the food has to move through that tunnel. And if that's shutting down, okay, if that's shutting down, that's not moving because you're in fight or flight. Well, frankly, you're gonna have nausea because the body's saying, well, don't put more in because it's just gonna come right back out the other way. Don't eat. Please don't eat anymore. So you're gonna get nausea to make you stop eating. You're going to get bloating because literally the food in their digestive tract is rotting. And when food rots, it creates gas. And so they bloat. And then, of course, we have gas. And then, of course, constipation. Constipation is going to, because it's not moving. And this is all part of that anxiety. And the rates of anxiety, especially amongst young people, is rampant. Now, you add that for those of you who you're like, no, we need to talk about me. I'm in my, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, and whatnot. And yeah, ton of anxiety. Well, you're experiencing all of those same things as well. When you are in fight or flight, when your system is in that state, your digestive system, your whole digestive process just shuts down. When that happens, you don't just have digestive issues, you have absorption issues because you're not going to absorb. You could have the best diet. You could have the best diet in the world. You could follow every guru and eat perfectly. But if it is not moving, you are not absorbing it. And it doesn't, and it's all for naught. Even if you're taking thousands and thousands of dollars worth of supplements, it doesn't matter. If your system is going into fight or flight, you're not absorbing. Now, if you want to, I have a whole other videos on anxiety and fight or flight. Please, if you need directions to any of that, how to get your system out of fight or flight, happy to help get into that. But for right now, I just want to make the I don't want to make the case. That's the wrong way to say it. I just want to create this awareness of the root cause of why so many people, so many women are dealing with hormone issues. I hope this all just makes a ton of sense right now. And again, for those of you brave men who have been watching and you're looking at this, this is definitely something, when you have that special, your wife or the women in your life, it's not always easy to bring up some of these conversations, but it's very easy to bring up nutrient density. That's a conversation that just about anybody can have. And you know what? Hey, honey, I think you may be depleted. I think a lot of women are going to say, yeah, I empathize. That's the way I feel. I feel depleted. I feel drained. They'll even say those words. So again, just to bring this full circle for those of you who are really, really following me on this, those who have hormone issues, remember your hormones, your reproductive system, it's at the end of the food chain. So if we're not getting enough food on the front side, and I'm not talking about, not eating it, I'm just saying you're not digesting it because you have a weak digestive system. you got damage with antibiotics that needs to be repaired. Maybe you have some genetic factors that need to be addressed, or maybe it's fight or flight, or could be something totally different. I'm just hitting the top ones. I'm just hitting the big ones. It could be a whole other thing. We'd have to go through that on an individual basis. That because of those things, now here we have teenagers who are having horrific menstrual cycles. We have women in their 20s and 30s who are, having infertility issues, and we have women in their 40s and their 50s having extreme menopause symptoms. It's not your hormones. You're depleted. That's the root cause. So, what do we do? So first and foremost, let me go to the early years. Let me talk about, if it's okay, I would like to talk about fertility more so today, and then kind of get into get into the other decades of how this depletion shows up. So with regards to fertility issues, or whether this is inability to get pregnant, lots of miscarriages, whatever that scenario is, I know a lot of women are being told that there's something fundamentally wrong with you. You have XYZ issue. No matter what, no matter what, fueling you up and getting you the nutrients you need is only going to leave you better. That's like, whenever I'm looking at treatment protocols, one of my questions always that I'm asking is, okay, yeah, but what are the side effects? Okay, yeah, but what is the risk associated with doing this? And that's the beautiful thing about refueling and doing and just addressing this first, because there's only positive side effects. And I'm going to tell you, as far as cost effective, so many people think that eating healthy costs so much. It does not. In fact, most people who know how to eat right, and when they're eating the foods that they're supposed to be eating, your grocery bill is going to go down. And frankly, you're not going to be eating out as much, because you're just going to realize the nutrient density of a lot of the things that you're eating and takeout and restaurants and everything. It's just not there. So I'm going to tell you, cost effective, it is radically cost effective. So it's just a win-win-win all the way around when it comes to, refueling you. So for the most part, with regards to fertility, I want to make sure everybody kind of understands why, especially this factors in. If the body doesn't have what it needs to keep you going, it's definitely not going to allow another passenger on board. It just makes sense. Your body, a woman's body, is always going to prioritize survival first. It does not want to do anything that could harm self. It's just how we're designed. So what the body will do is you'll have irregular cycles, or no cycles, or continuous miscarriages, or it just just what we will not see pregnancies taking. Now, in extreme examples of this, again, women don't have cycles or whatnot, something's really wrong. But like, for those of you who are kind of like in that middle ground, you're not all the way over here where it's like an obvious disease process, but you're kind of over here. You may even be getting all your test results, you're getting your labs done. They're like, oh yeah, everything's normal. You're within range, and you're just being told those things. We see this so often. Let me tell you, the first time I ever really got to see this, like in live and in living color. So I had a staff member who was working for me. This was years and years ago, and she was just such an angel of the practice, and I valued her so much. And one day, she had a necklace on, and it had a little bird's nest in it, and on the bird's nest was these little eggs. And I asked her one day, like, it's such a unique necklace, what is it? And she said, yeah, that's actually the representation of all of the miscarriages that I've had. There are 5 little eggs in that bird's nest. And like, the second she told me that, like, I broke. And if you know me at all, there is no way I am letting somebody work with me and we not address this problem. I mean, we're going to at least try. Worst case scenario, we're going to give it a shot. and see what we can do. So we did a full workup on her. And, it wasn't surprising. She was catastrophically low in so many core nutrients. I mean, it wasn't like a little off. I mean, but nobody tested for those things because it wasn't part of her workups. She had been through 5 miscarriages and nobody did an expanded workup. They just like keep trying. Well, in her particular case, can I just tell you, like, we don't necessarily get to see, our patients every single day. That's, you see patients as they're progressing through. So very rarely do we get to see them day in, day out, talk to them on an everyday basis and see how everything. This was one of the first times I got to do that. And so we went through, here's what we need to do with you. I even warned, I said, listen, you don't want to get pregnant right away though. We got to refuel you. We need to get these numbers off of the basement floor here first. Before we do that. Well, oh, she was pregnant very, very quick. I don't know. I want to say within weeks. She was pregnant. And it's like, okay, all right, we're in, I'm in, we're doing this. God bless that girl. I mean, that was a difficult pregnancy. Remember, she didn't have the fuel she needed. She had just enough to keep this pregnancy sustained, but it was rough. And the number of days when she was there working, God bless her for showing up. God bless her. She was there working with an IV in her arm. Of course, luckily we had that access, but we had to like put intravenous nutrients into her just to keep things going. I mean, because like there's her digestive system could not keep up with the demand that was happening. Because again, this happened a little too quick. Not every woman who's depleted is going to need IV therapy during her pregnancy, especially with rebuild. But I have to say, watching how her system responded day in, day out to what we are doing, to the nutrition, to the depletions, and just addressing everything. And pretty soon she had the most beautiful baby girl. Oh, and I got to watch her, just so smart, so bright. It's just such a perfect little girl. And it was just such a great experience for me. And then that experience then has transformed how I. Oh, there we are. We're back. So that experience has transformed how we look at everything from that point on, especially with regards to fertility and miscarriages and all that. And then we've only got more proficient since then. Now I understand, we know so much more about genetics and genetic testing, and how the genetic factors and which multivitamins and which prenatals women should be taking and which ones actually make the whole thing worse. Did you know that? I didn't know this. Well, we didn't. Nobody really knew it a couple decades ago. But there are certain prenatals that actually going to make this whole process may even can prevent women from being able to get pregnant. It's been enlightening, just really understanding all of that. So to with regards to fertility, no matter what, even whenever different families have chosen, they said, you know what, no, based on what's going on, we really do want to do some of these interventions, IVF, you name it. We want to do the intervention. Even then, I would still strongly recommend getting checked for the nutritional side of things because you want to ensure your investment. Think about it this. Okay, what if the reason the body is not allowing this to happen is because of a nutritional deficiency? If you use technology to try to overcome that, well, the root cause is still there. You still have a nutritional deficiency that needs to get addressed. And I mean, like, just for mom's health, that needs to be addressed, but baby too. What's baby going to be eating this whole time? There has to be that nutrition there for baby as well. So that's where I'm kind of, I get a little, I feel like sometimes that some of these procedures are a little cart before the horse because we need to make sure that you are fueled. In either way, that just makes good sense. If you're going to go through all of this, you want to make sure that there's enough there for everyone involved. I run into so many women who end up in hospitals and needing IVs and all of that just to keep them going during these pregnancies when it didn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. So even if that's the direction you want to go, I really encourage that. With regards to fertility and that, like I said, I'm going to get into postpartum and I'm going to get into menopause and perimenopause. I'm going to get into that later weeks. But with regards to fertility as well, I want to just spend a second on something that is just really important to me, and that is epigenetics. Epigenetics, we've known about it for from what I understand, apparently we've known about it for 40 to 50 years. I've been aware of it for about 20. And what I've been able to see, so epigenetics is understanding how DNA changes over time, even within the individual. So, like for instance, your DNA does transform, it does change based on how you're eating or exercising or not eating or what you got exposed to or traumas. All of these things impact your DNA and they change and they can change back and forth. So, the theory, this is amazing. Hang in here with me. So the theory behind epigenetics is certain genes, they turn on and off, and based on whether that gene is turned on or off at the time of conception determines whether that gene gets passed down to the next generation. Think about that for 1 second. So let's say the type 2 diabetes gene. It's type 2 diabetes is very, very, very genetic. And if you don't have the type 2 diabetes gene, it doesn't matter how bad you eat, you don't really get type 2 diabetes. My dad is a perfect example of that. Wow. I mean, I have never seen a human being take on so much sugar. He doesn't, his A1C stays fine. My poor mother, she looks at a cookie and her glucose goes up. Her A1C rises. It depends on if you have the gene. So think about this and the potential here. If that gene is turned off at the time of conception, then that gene doesn't pass down. Baby doesn't get the gene. Now I know so many young people, they're not really thinking about that because they don't have all these problems. They don't have all of they don't have all the things. This isn't something we usually start thinking about until we get a little older and we start experiencing the effects of our genetics. But those of you who have are either in this whole fertility world and this is something that you're really working on, or maybe your children or your grandchildren are in this era and they're working in here. Man, taking just a little bit of time to work on the the factors you can work on, and I'd have to get into more detail and I have to get into specifics with individuals, but getting the diet right, getting those different things that maximize your genetics so that we see the difference. And I know this may sound like science fiction, right? And whenever it first came up, I was like, you know what? It's cool. And again, back to risk to reward. There's no risk. I mean, eat healthier, exercise better. That's kind of a that works all around that. There's no risk there, so why not? And what's been really cool, I've been watching this. I've been watching this happen for the better part of 2 decades. So I've gotten to see now the effects of a full generation later, and there's no doubt that epigenetics is real. I have seen individuals who have had children before they got all of their they got their act right, the eating, and then the other children, that once they ate healthy and started doing the things, and the difference in the health, same mom, same dad, radically different health spectrums in the children. And I mean, I've seen this so many times. Again, you can kind of understand how this happens, like whenever you're in practice, because people are coming in, maybe in their late 20s, early 30s, or maybe they're looking for that to have that last one in their late 30s, early 40s, and they already have a couple children, and then want to have this next one. Wow. Wow. It's just it's a dynamic difference in what we're just seeing, and in a lot of different factors, not just health and not just allergies and not just food sensitivities, and not just those things, but even just, coordination and, just astuteness. And it really is noticeable, again, throughout the years. And it's been really cool because now a lot of these babies who this was a theory, 20 years ago, now we're seeing them just excelling in so many areas of life. And it's just a cool thing to be a part of it. Can I just say that? I think anybody can really understand. It's just so neat to be a part of a thriving, happy, healthy family. So, for those of you who this is something very, very interesting to you, maybe for you, maybe for friends, maybe for your children, please do just share this. It is a travesty if somebody's going through all these procedures or doesn't have the family that they deserve to have or want to have because of something so simple, so fixable, and relatively necessary to manage, necessary to address. Again, I do use exploratory blood work to define, so that's how I go about that. And for what it's worth, those of you who are already on my mailing list, those of you who are already subscribed, um, right now I do have that code. If you go to my website and you order your exploratory panel, um, just for the next week or so, there's that code family, FAMILY. Again, this is in January 2026. So if you're watching this later on, I'm sorry, but that right now, I really want to help some families, and it's just been on my heart. I'm not going to start crying, but I heard a really amazing story just recently. Sorry. Um, the young family, and there's no way I'm not helping them. There's no way. I'm going to do everything I possibly can do. And I was like, you know what? They're not alone. I know they're not alone. I know they're not the only ones out there who are just devastated by what's going on, and the way how they can't have the family that they want. So, if you use that code, order exploratory panel, use that code family. It takes $95 off the cost of your exploratory panel, and you get an expanded consultation where I can go through all the details that we need to go through for the epigenetic factors. Um, in the coming weeks, those of you who are interested more for, you already had your children, you're the tired mom, or you're maybe in those menopausal years, you can use that same code, family. Again, it takes $95 off. And your expanded consultation will go towards other things like energy conservation. A lot of you want weight loss. So we'll do your weight loss plan. Okay, that'll be in there. But you get during that expanded consultation, and it's going to be an expanded time. We will go into those details, those finer details, with that. But for this week, I really hope, please, 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 please share this with anybody before they go and do a ton of other things, or maybe start taking some different medications or whatever. This is something to be looking into. So I thank you all so much. Please leave in any questions or whatever in the comments. If you are a member, we'll get to any questions you have during office hours where we can talk in more detail about this. But otherwise, thank you all so much for hanging in there. You all are amazing. And I'm really, really grateful to be able to share this with you. Thank you.